Who Moved the Stone? A Skeptic's Look at the Death and Resurrection of Christ by Frank Morris. Foreword by Lee Strobel. Preface. This study is in some ways so unusual and provocative that the writer thinks it desirable to state here very briefly how the book came to take its present form. In one sense, it could have taken no other, for it is essentially a confession, the inner story of a man who originally set out to write one kind of book and found himself compelled by the sheer force of circumstances to write another. It is not that the facts themselves altered, for they were recorded imperishably in the monuments and in the pages of human history, but the interpretation to be put upon the facts underwent a change. Somehow the perspective shifted, not suddenly, as in a flash or insight or inspiration, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, by the very stubbornness of the facts themselves. The book as it was originally planned was left high and dry, like those Thames barges when the great river goes out to meet the incoming sea. The writer discovered one day that not only could he no longer write the book as he had once conceived it, but that he would not if he could. To tell the story of that change and to give the reasons for it is the main purpose of the following pages. Foreword. Although we're from different eras, Albert Henry Ross and I have much in common. We are both writers. I was the legal editor of the Chicago Tribune. Ross, who as a child attended Shakespeare's old grammar school at Stratford-on-Avon, was a prolific author who wrote under the pen name Frank Morris. Both of us were greatly fascinated by the law. More important, both of us were skeptics. When young Ross attended church services in his native England, he would stand with the others to recite the Apostles' Creed. Saying that Jesus suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead and buried, came easily from his lips. But he could go no further. Setting his teeth tightly, as he put it, Ross declined to affirm that, quote-unquote, the third day he rose again from the dead. The reasons for Ross's skepticism were similar to my own. Born in 1881, Ross grew up in an age of scientific rationalism. Certainly the idea of Jesus' miraculous resurrection must come from primitive mythology, he concluded, because returning from the dead would violate the laws of nature. For me, it was the scientific theory of evolution that chased away my faith, because, I reasoned, if evolution explained the origin and development of life, then God was simply out of a job. Ross's skepticism was further fueled by German theologians who dissected the Gospels and decided that the narrative of Jesus' life are largely unreliable. Mine was fueled through taking a course on the historical Jesus from a liberal professor when I was an impressionable freshman at a state university. But if that were all Ross and I held in common, I wouldn't be writing this foreword. The most significant overlap in our experiences is that we both became spiritual seekers. For Ross, the process began as he thoroughly investigated the last 7 days of Jesus' life for a short monograph he planned to write. The more he probed the historical record, and the more he let his conclusions take him unhindered to where the evidence pointed, the more he became stunned by his findings. The outcome proved to be quite different from what he had anticipated. In the end, he came to believe there is a deep and profoundly historical basis for that much disputed sentence in the Apostles' Creed. The third day he rose again from the dead. Ross's journey makes fascinating reading, as you will discover for yourself. His findings, published under the title Who Moved the Stone, were made public in 1930 and quickly became a powerful testimony to the evidence of the resurrection of Jesus. 50 years after Ross's book first appeared, and 30 years after his death, my wife's conversion to Christianity prompted me to begin investigating whether there is any credibility to the claims of Jesus. One of the first books I read during my spiritual journey was Who Moved the Stone. The book spurred my own investigation, which eventually led to my decision to become a follower of Jesus on November 8, 1981. Later, I began writing books that, like Ross's, recount the historical facts that I personally found persuasive. So I owe Ross a great debt of gratitude. Who Moved the Stone was an important early link in a long chain of evidence that God used to bring me into his kingdom. Ross's stirring intellectual exploration of the historical record proved to be an excellent starting point for my spiritual investigation. Whether you are a spiritual seeker with doubts about the veracity of the Bible, or a committed Christian who wants to strengthen your faith, I urge you to read on. You will find much to encourage you as you read the book that Albert Henry Ross, that is, Frank Morris, never thought he would write. Lee Strobel, author, The Case for Christ and the Case for Faith.